Hi everyone, welcome to the Transformative Media Organizing Project Skillshare. Today, Terry Marshall will join us from Intelligent Mischief and the Center for Story-Based Strategy to share some tools about storytelling and messaging. One sec, I've heard that the video isn't working. All right, so great, now it is. We'll get started by doing introductions with all the partners of the Transformative Media Organizing Project this year, and we'll go alphabetical. So starting off with Anthony.
Hey, I'm Anthony. I'm from New Orleans. I'm with the New Orleans JSA Network.
Hi, I'm Angel. I'm the LGBTQ consultant here at Nolly Jenkins.
Janice Harper, organizer and advocate for the Nolly Jenkins Family Center.
Hey, I'm Bex Hurwitz. I'm with Research Action Design. Some folks off screen are also with Research Action Design, Chris Schweidler and Sasha Stanza-Chak. And Jess?
Hi, my name is Jess, and I'm with the Solutions Not Punishment Coalition in Atlanta.
Hi, I'm Harlan Pruden, and I'm with the Two-Spirit Journal, and I'm based in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada.
Sorry to go out of order. My name is Kamisha Smith. I'm with Nolly Jenkins Family Center in Holmes County, Mississippi. I'm the youth coordinator and also working on our LGBTQ focus group with the Transformative Media Organizing Project.
Thanks so much, everyone. So if you are following along, you can see all of the media for the Skillshare at transformativemedia.cc. Please join us there. And with that, take it away, Terry.
Ooh, thank you, everybody. Can everyone hear me? Fine? Okay. Cool. All right, so thank you, Bex. Thank you, the whole crew, Transformative Media Organized Project, for inviting me and allowing me this opportunity to actually just share some information with you, and I really hope that what I'm able to share with you will be helpful for your future campaigns. So a little bit myself, I've been doing some organizing for about 20 years now. I've largely been involved in like what I call cultural organizing and different media and multimedia projects, and I'm currently the founder of Intelligent Mischief, which we call Creative Action Design Lab. We help organizations find creative ways to solve solutions and approach it that way. And I'm also an associate trainer for a Center for Story-Based Strategy. What I'm hoping to do today is just take you through a workshop that's been developed by folks at Center for Story-Based Strategy that's going to teach people about framing and what we call narrative power analysis and how all this fits into what we call like story-based strategy. And at Intelligent Mischief, we use a lot of tools for CSS, and we try to adapt it, innovate on them. The second half of what we're going to do, you're going to see a tool that's called Battle of Story that helps people shape what narrative they want to create in fighting for their cause. That we sort of adapted it to, at Intelligent Mischief, we adapted it to They Say, We Say. I'll get into that. But as people can see on if you can see on your screen, we're starting with the slideshow. So I'm just going to jump into it. We've got 20 minutes for this. Can we go to the next slide on this? Cool. So this is sort of going to be a little bit interactive. So I'm going to ask people. Some things. What do people see in this image?
Fear. Someone trying to save themselves from getting eaten by the shark.
Eaten by the shark. Fear.
I see a horrible situation, like.
Right. Where has anyone been bitten by a shark? This is presentation right here. No?
No.
No.
But you know that's a scary situation, right? Just for viewing it, right?
Yeah.
What's some stories around scary sharks?
Jaws.
Jaws?
Mm-hmm.
That's like the main story, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Can we go to the next slide? Oh, Bets can hear me. Sorry. Jaws, right? Who's seen this movie?
I have.
Who's seen it, right? What's the story of Jaws?
It's about a big fish that is plaguing the somewhere in the northeast, and folks are hunting it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the noise, the music that's associated with Jaws?
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. Doo-doot, doo-doot.
Everyone knows that, right? That's what comes to mind. So when you see sharks, you got the background noise. So you see sharks, that's like very scary. Like Jaws is this story that's been put out there around like sharks. So if you saw a sign that says sharks in the water, would you go swimming in that area? Not at all, right?
Oh.
All right, can we go to the next slide? What do people see in this image? What does it make you think of?
Kids.
Huh?
A mosquito.
Mosquito.
Mm-hmm.
What do people think about mosquitoes? What's the story about mosquitoes?
West Nile virus, itchiness, bug bite, annoyance.
Annoying.
Pain.
Summertime.
Sometime. Sometimes usually happy. West Nile. Anyone ever got West Nile virus? Hello? Okay. Cool. So if you knew there was mosquitoes outside, would you go outside? Just in general. You just knew summertime and you wanted to take a walk, you're like, yeah, probably mosquitoes outside. Would you be afraid to go outside?
No.
No, spray on some owl.
You don't come out. Okay. All right, can we go to the next slide? So this is a chart. Bill Gates blogged about this chart a few years ago, right? And now this chart shows what are the deadliest animals, like from the least deadliest to the most deadliest animals to human beings. Can someone tell me what is the least deadly animal to human beings?
Shark. If I'm seeing it right, shark.
Sharks, right? And wherever this chart was taking place, about 10 people died from sharks, right? From shark attacks. What is the most deadliest animal towards human beings, according to this chart?
Mosquito.
Mosquitoes, right? 725,000 people have died from mosquitoes. So given that these are facts, these are pure facts, these are numbers, they're allocated. Why is it that we're more afraid of shark attacks than we are of mosquitoes?
Because we don't see mosquitoes. They're so small, we don't see them as being like a major threat or something that we're really afraid of. Because we can kill them once they bite us. We can, we try to attempt to kill them. But with a shark, we are basically defenseless against a shark, and it's just like your life flashing before your eyes when you come in contact with the shark. Whereas a mosquito, they don't scare us. We can kill them, but we don't see them as a threat.
Right.
I also think a lot of how many of us have some sort of relationship to that movie Jaws, and also when one of those 10 folks, I'm sure that we saw some sort of news coverage, like in North Carolina this year, when some beach, it was all over every news, including here in Canada, about some sort of shark attack. And so I think the narrative where people, someone gets malaria we don't really talk about that, and it's not some big sort of scary disease and someone dying in some developing nation or some tropical nation. We don't really pay that any mind because there isn't some like ominous, beautiful soundtrack, dun 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 dun, and also some sensationalism about someone surviving a shark attack or being bitten or actually dying. We see it on the news, and it hits the national news cycle.
Yep. So that, I mean, you perfectly captured it. This is the power of narrative, right? Because as you was also saying that we could kill mosquitoes, right? It seems like, oh, mosquitoes just kill them off. Sharks are more dangerous. Actually, so my friend's from Barbados. In the Caribbean, there's a dish called bacon shark, right? And it tastes really good. But actually found out this past summer that they actually are stopping people from making it because they're killing, so many sharks are being killed, actually. They're afraid of extinction of certain sharks. So we actually kill sharks in a great number. We kill sharks in a greater number than sharks kill us, right? But because of this story, right, the story that's in our heads, the story that we've been told about sharks, we are more afraid of sharks than we are of mosquitoes, right? So we showed this as an example of the power of narrative, right? That what we like to do in our social movements is a lot of times we depend on numbers, and we think that we have the truth and we have the facts, that we could come with that. But it was like, it's actually not about the truth. It's actually about meaning, right? It's what the meaning that's associated with things for people. We use story to make sense of the world. So we as social justice practitioners have to tell better stories. We have to develop what's the meaning, what does this mean to people, right? Because even after you see this chart and after you see the facts, right? Next slide. So even after everything I told you, are you still more afraid of sharks of this image than if I showed you a mosquito?
Yes.
Right? You can say no if you want. But that's the reality, and that's the power of narrative. Narrative shapes our reality. So we understand narrative, and we understand how to break down narrative and how to use it better. Then we can understand how we actually could start dealing with reality better and actually offer alternative reality, alternative social justice world that we want to produce. Can I get the next slide, please? I'll just start going through these faster. So what we practice with sentence story-based strategy is something called narrative power analysis, right? And we think this is essential, right, to understanding that in the world there's these dominant, the powers that be shape narrative. They have control of media. They have control of the images that go out to us. So we need to develop a narrative power analysis to break down what it is that we're trying to fight against, right? When we're coming through our stories, we're offering new stories, new narrative. But because of the dominant stories that people have in their head and stories that already have, people have filters. So we have to break through these filters with our new stories. And so we have to understand narrative and how to tell better narrative to break through some of these filters, right? Just a look here, filter is not what people don't know, it's what they do know, right? So we're breaking through what people are even told by the dominant stories. Some of the memes, we just have some memes that's like a mixture of dominant narrative and say oppositional narrative. So the first one is, live in a post-racial society, never been stopped by the police, right? That's what we put out there. That's an example of, this is our oppositional narrative, right? Like, oh, you say that, but it's also because what your life experience has been shaped. Welfare queen. That was popularized by Ronald Reagan, president in the United States in the 1980s. And this is like a meme that goes with it. It's like, you say welfare queen, people could get this image immediately. Poor black woman who's living high off of the state, right? Which is not true, but it's a narrative that shapes people's reality. Jobs versus environment. Also, you can tell that this graphic, Fox News, the government's killing my business, right? A lot of things that are not true, but it's a powerful narrative that shapes people's realities, and was what we have to deal with. So we have to reframe. So the main focus of what we need to do is to reframe and change the story, right? So now I'm going to get into framing. Let me go to the next slide. Okay, who's seen this image before? Tell me what's going on in this image.
That was the day that they pulled down Saddam Hussein's statue.
Who pulled it down?
The citizens of Iraq, or
Right, right. This is the image that was blasted on mostly around the world, but mostly in U.S. media. CNN showed this. It was like it plays into a narrative of the United States is coming to rescue the poor people of Iraq. You know, we're bringing down the dictator. The people are pulling down the statue themselves. Can you go to the next slide? Next slide. Thank you. So I don't, if people, in case people can't tell what this image is, this is the same exact image that you saw before. It's just taken from a different angle, different viewpoint. So this was a story that was became popular around the world, but not in the U.S. at the time. Some reporters who were not embedded with the U.S. Army were staying at the Palestine hotel where they had this point of view of what was happening. And in this point of view, what you see is it's a lot less people. It's a small number of people. And you see around is the U.S. tanks surrounding them, right? This was a very staged photo op to show that, oh, look, the citizens themselves are so happy and they're pulling down the statue of Saddam Hussein, where in actuality, U.S. soldiers rounded up people, kind of like, oh, told them, go ahead, encouraged them to do this. And they're surrounded by tanks, and there's a very few number of them, right? So this is the power of framing. It's literally within the frame, with the edges of the frame, you could box out what you don't want to see. And framing is about ideology and power. In this frame, this picture gets out, it's clear that who has the power is the United States government. It's clear that people may be being coerced to do something, right? The previous picture is that gives the power to the Iraqi people themselves. It seems like they're self-liberating, right? So framing, so we need to understand framing as physical framing, but also framing in like the messages that we give out and the narratives that we deploy. That's where real power comes in. Can I get the next slide? Can you get the next slide? Possible. Thank you. So just like, we have a quick short definition of frames as operates as pre-existing narrative lens in our minds. That's the dominant frames that go on. So we're coming with new frames, new stories, right? The larger story that shapes understanding information, experiences, and messages. The structure and boundaries of narrative that defines point of view and power, right? That's like a breakdown definition of framing. Some of these right here is also some oppositional frames. We have the very popular polar bears. The polar bears are dying. That's a climate change narrative, largely from Al Gore. That is attracting a certain number of people. Your framing gets at your audience. You market with that. Climate change. The next one, we're going clockwise. The image. This framing is kind of a scientific data frame, right? We'll jump into this now. Just to go along. So that was some examples. But we also understand that framing also is like life and death. So this right here, I don't know if people remember, this was the Katrina hurricane crisis in New Orleans. What happened early in the day in the Associated Press, they showed the image of a young black man who was trying to survive and had food in a bag, and it said the title said looting. That's later on in the day, that same paper did a story and showed two young white people doing the same exact thing that the young black man did. It said finding food, right? That wording and image is framing, and that framing also, when the United States Army is told to go in and shoot looters to help people trying to find food, framing is a matter of life and death, right? And so this is things we have to combat. Next frame, next slide. So what's helpful in framing, another tool, some story-based strategies named using Smart Meme. And now memes are very much popular, but we like to think of memes as a capsule for a story to spread. And the thing is, in today's media environment, memes are very much used. Memes are like used to like actually, funny, could be able to distort stories as well. But we think that what we need to understand memes to get very complex messages out there in a very short time span, very short way, right? A capsule to capture the story is spread. So like I think another thing is like a lot of our stuff as social justice practitioners, like we're very wordy because the issues we're dealing with are very complex, but that's not going to get out to people. So we need to take control of our messaging and understanding like, okay, how can we get a meme that actually gets at the core of the message, right? Right here we have a bunch of popular memes. This is Homer going, "Don't," like that. Everyone knows universally that means Homer is messing up. We have Brangelina over here, the Anchor Baby, which is a very right-wing meme that was trying to like destroy the image of like the innocent young people who are immigrants, their parents being brave and coming over, just trying to survive, right? They try to take that and try to twist it, and it's like Anchor Baby meme. Next slide. Next slide. Just lagging. Sorry about that. Go through this really quickly. We just use this as an example. Like, recently in 2011, Occupy movement was a very powerful meme that came from opposition forces, our folks. We are the 99%. That had traction across the board, right? It was a very broad meme. We could do people have critiques about it, but it was largely effective to changing the story. Effectively, after Occupy, the media coverage of economic issues in the United States drastically shifted, like what the conversation was, right? Next slide. Sorry about the lag time. So what we think is very important is for us to like change the story. We have to reframe the messages that are going on, and we're fighting dominant narratives. And what we found useful is that to tell a story, we found these are very useful like elements of the story that we've discovered, the CSS, right? We have conflict, characters, imagery, foreshadowing, underlying assumptions. We think underlying assumptions is the most important thing. It's the message that you're trying to get out. It often relates to like making the invisible visible, right? The underlying assumption is often not verbally said. It's just something like within your message, how you deliver your story, the underlying assumption is agreed upon with your audience that you're trying to get to. Next slide. So this is how this would work. So every story, like movies, children's story, folklore, mythology, these are elements that break you down to them. Maybe not all, but this is what we find essential. So this is how it would look in an action, us displaying action or us trying to develop a narrative for a social justice cause. We call it like winning the battle story. The conflict, we have to frame the conflict, right? It draws our attention to particular details of the story and avoids others outside the frame. Like remember that, like how we must pay attention to frame itself. Characters, we amplify the voices of those most impacted. That's what we should put, those most impacted to the forefront as our characters. How do we display that in the messages and actions that we do? Imagery, show, don't tell. Engage people's values. A good story emphasizes value and imagery over data, right? Foreshadowing. In this part, what we like to show, usually in movies, foreshadowing is like hinting what's going to happen next. Well, we want to hint at the future that we want. We want to offer alternative future. And then we challenge assumptions, making invisible visible. We change the story. Next slide. So what I have here is I'm gonna like wrap it up real quick. Sorry, I'm long-winded. This is the most very key part is points of intervention. It's a tool we use. We found that like in system thinking and understanding how we attack the system, we often come for like these 4 major points: point of production, point of consumption, point of decision, point of destruction. And we found the 5th point being a point of assumption. The point of assumption attacks like the idea space, right? It's like when we start to shift with people's minds. So point of assumption actually could be overlaid on top of any of the these other points of intervention are often like physical points. But it's like, how can you play with a point of assumption at a point of consumption, decision, destruction, or production? I don't know. I might just I might skip the rest if I'm out of time, and just go into question and answer. I don't know if
Can you just do one example and then go into it?
one example. Okay. Back to the next slide. Yes. So point of production. I'll show you an example. Then I'll try to just say the others. Point of production. This often happens at, like, a factory strike or sit down and take over. This is workers in Chicago. I think back in 2008, they was taking over their factory. Right. This is often a point of production where we're like, okay, where's work? Where's workforce? The economy is happening at, and we try to take action there. Point of decision is usually like discovering who's the decision maker for your target. Usually like President Obama, the Congress, dealing with government. When we say take over his office or attack that's the point of decision when we attack. Point of destruction. That's often a lot of times within say environmental struggles. Point of destruction is often like trees are being torn down or chemicals that are poisoning us in the environment. But we shut down those factories or chemicals or bring attention to that. That's when you're attacking the point of destruction. And point of, did we go into consumption? Point of consumption is often like people boycotting, economic boycotts. That's a simple example of where we attack at the point of consumption. All of these parts, right? These are examples of people using point of assumption at that. This is last point of assumption. There was a campaign, a friend of ours who's also a trained associate who created the blog called We Are Not Trayvon Martin. He did this to challenge white folks in saying like, oh, we don't have the same, it's not us who are being attacked, but we can be allies, right? And talk about how we impact racism, but also impacted by it, but a different way. The next project is a project by my crew at Mischief called the Black Body Survival Guide. Is a forthcoming book that we're writing right now, and what we did was it's a satirical book. We flipped on said that the sort of killings of young black people, of black people all ages, by the state is so absurd and ridiculous at this point. Even the explanations they offer are so ridiculous that the only way to counter it is with satire, with absurdity. So we made a survival guide saying like, oh, black people need a new tool, some tips to survive in this new age, because obviously it's their fault that they're being killed, right? So we're flipping it on its head. We're making fun of it and being like, one of the goals we have is that just exposing the absurdity of the killings that's going on, taking to this logical conclusion. So that we did with point of assumption. We're trying to reframe the story by doing that. And just the very last slide, just as a recap. Sorry, I went over time. The very, very last one, next one after that. That was, wish I could have gone to that. So just to recap, in order to achieve deep institutional change, we must shift meaning in the dominant culture, right? It's not simply about truth, it's about meaning. Culture is made up of stories and meanings. Stories is how we make sense of the world as human beings. Stories are founded on assumptions, right? That's the deepest bottom line messaging get out. Intervention stories can shift assumptions and contest dominant culture to help achieve fundamental change. So we're changing assumptions, we're reframing stories in order to shift change, because that shift is culture in society and has effects in all realms, like economic, political, cultural, all that. That's my very speed through session. We have modes for question and answer right now, and hopefully this makes sense to people.
Well, I think, this is Tanisha. I think you did a great job of explaining. It was clear and I understood it. My question is, I hear myself echoing. Do y'all hear me echoing?
Just a
I
little
don't
bit.
know. Okay. All right. My question is, So I understand that it's important for us to put out our own kind of media, but what's the most effective way to put out our own media and it gets like a lot of views or a lot of attention when you have the major media networks who are covering stories like the ones we saw in your presentation only from a certain angle, and that gets people to believe what they want them to believe. So what's the most effective way that you and your organization, or just in general, can organizations or individuals put out their own stories and media the most effective way so that people are able to, um, I guess, see or really understand the truth behind the stories that are being put out, if that makes sense.
No, definitely makes sense. Well, three things I would say, just in terms of like, um, one, I would say, in terms of making our own media, I think in order to get ourselves to scale, the wonderful thing I think we have is networks and networks of people, and that helps us get to scale to counter the larger media and all the money and massive reach they have. The other thing I would say is I think there's also a lot of power and value in learning how to leverage and do some media jujitsu with the large media companies. So when we do actions, let's understand how media works and how we could design narratives that are catchy and effective that even the mainstream media would catch on, would take it and help spread it for us. Like we shouldn't be afraid to actually tackle them and what I call like practicing jujitsu, them flipping it, using their own leverage against them. The last thing I would say too is a lot of times we like to think of how do we just get everyone, how can we reach everybody, and that's like a false notion. We should be figuring out what's your issue, what's your target audience, and what's your target audience and what's the critical mass you can get to help you achieve the change that you want. So targeting on that, figure out what's your assumption that you're trying to get across, what's the message you're trying to get across, and that I think that will help focus like to create larger change.
Thank you.
So yeah, I started a media campaign for queer and trans folks who have experienced domestic violence. So yesterday was the launch, and I'm getting a lot of good feedback. But I'm just wondering if you have any advice for me on how to go about sharing these stories in a light that people understand that domestic violence just doesn't happen to cis people, and that because I want to make sure that erasure doesn't happen to like non-binary folks, trans folks, and then queer folks, who have gone through that. So I was just wondering if you had any advice on how to make this a successful media campaign.
I would say quickly as well. We have this is just like what I've displayed was just like a hint of some of the tools that CSS has. We have some of the tools, something we call the drama triangle, where we get people to like sort of situate the section where it's like elements of the story where it's characters. Right? We think like, okay, so essential to your story, who do you want at the forefront? Whose story you want told? Who do you want not to be forgotten or erased? Right? And we position the triangle as like who's the villain, who's the hero, who's the victim. There's problems with that, but you could complicate it, right? You also turn usually who's the victim into like the hero, not that someone's saving someone. But I would say think about that, like think about those stories. I don't have like a all solution answer to this, but just something to be helpful. Think about in telling the stories. Make sure like, okay, how we take this person who's our character we want to put at the forefront, who's often forgotten or often erased. How do we put their story at the forefront and also display it, connect it to images or so when we talk about values, connect to how this person's story is connected to a value that's like that will reach across to everyone, right? Just say like, no, we're here. Like, I would say for the Dreamers movement, people, that was something that was like, it was before the Dreamers movement, it was just written off that like if you're undocumented, then you just cannot be seen. It's so dangerous. But people put their story at the forefront and like just they reframed it. They was able to reframe it. So I think that's a lot of things too. Thinking about how to like just reframe it. Like, no, we're gonna demand that we are at the forefront and not forgotten.
Thank you so much, Terry. This has been very informative. I typed in 2 questions. Do you all take into account like secondary consumption? And there was an interesting case study on an island here in Vancouver in the Georgia Straits called Cortez Island, and it was under threat of being logged. And so the activists, of course, were like chaining themselves to trees and like sleeping out in trees. But then a group of the folks got together and they did a complete analysis of the logging company, who was purchasing their products, like what paper companies were purchasing their products. And then what they did was they looked at those paper companies and who were the major consumers of that. And they found that Victoria's Secrets, with all their little angels, and were producing these immense amount of catalogs. So then the activists flew to New York, met with Victoria's Secret, and talked about where their catalog products were coming from. And immediately Victoria's Secrets switched their marketing strategy to 50 or 75% post-recycling. And then the logging company was like brought to their knees, and they had to like bend their will and then meet with the activists. So it's just looking at not just like the immediate consumption, but like second and third level consumptions, and maybe that would be the most effective strategy. So I just share that as one example, and it made me think of that when you were talking. And the secondly is shifting the dominant narrative. And yeah, we can do memes, and I think that that's great, and that's one other strategy. But also I think that for like, why not set up a meeting with the Times editorial board and as group activists and say, this is our narrative, this is our story, as another way of shifting that dialogue and working in partnership. And I don't know what you think of that as a strategy. So those are 2 things. Thank you so much again.
Ooh, no, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, you know, what we like to say is like story-based strategy is just one strategy. It's not be-all, end-all strategy, and that this does not in no way replace, you know, traditional organizing strategy. This is something to add on top of that. So yeah, I agree well that whatever the context of your campaign or issue is, you know, use the strategies that you feel are best to able to achieve that. We just think this is another strategy to go along with it as well. I've gotten the message that we should move into the hands-on part of the workshop, of the webinar. So I don't know if that's how. Does everyone have like a copy that can see the hands-on part, the they say we say battle story part? How do I bring it up on mine, or is this just on here?
You could say for people who are watching remotely, from the Skillshare page here, there's a link to it.
Sorry about that. You know, just people watching remotely, if you go to the website, there should be a link. Should be a link to the battle story as well. I'm pulling up for myself. Every group should have this. Like, there should be a section in the battle story that's like particular to your issue and campaign. So usually with this tool, what we do is like we've described, right? There's about framing, it's about developing our own messaging. And that out there is a dominant story. There's a dominant story. There could be your opposition story, but you're actually fighting it, right? So we actually have to win the battle of the story. So what we want, we'll take this time, and people are gonna take about 15 minutes in their groups. Get your bracket in your group, and you're gonna go through this. So we usually have we have the elements of the story, right? The conflict, characters, images, foreshadowing, assumptions. There's a side of the bracket that says they say. they say that's your opposition. That's who you're fighting against. That's who your target, right? Whatever your issue is, I want you to get into that role play, right? Pretend that you are the opposition and start to fill in what your opposition would say, what the conflict of the issue is. Who's the main characters that your opposition would put out, right? What's the images they display, how they foreshadow, and what's the assumptions, the messages that bottom line message that they're trying to get across. Sorry. And so once you've gone through that, then you go to the we say, which is then, all right, you shake that off, you're not role playing anymore. You be yourself, be your campaign, and you then break down, so how do you frame the conflict? What's the characters you want to put out? What's your images you want to get out there? What's the future you want to show, foreshadowing? And what's your bottom line assumption that you're trying to get across, right? Seeing your opposition's narrative in front of you helps you understand where your position is as well. And then once that's done, we're gonna have, this is a simple, very simple way, right? What I've taught you is just a story-based strategy. I've given you like some groundwork to play with in developing your own strategy. So that could be social media, it could be a different type of way you do your campaign. But after this is just a brainstorm. What you're gonna do is try to take your message that you come up with, like what's your elements of your story, and try to create a hashtag for it. So it may be very hard because you're like there's so much things you have, but shaping it down to a hashtag, try to turn it to a hashtag. And that's how we're going to synthesize, and then we'll come back in the last 5 minutes and just have people share what they did. Does that make sense for everyone? Cool. Yeah. So we're going to do this part individually, and just have people go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back to it. Cool. Just to let people know, you have 3 more minutes. 3 more minutes on this. I'm working on this. In case people haven't already, you should definitely get to the we say part. Definitely, even if you haven't finished the they say, get into the we say part before we come back. All right. Have to ask everyone to put down their number 2 pencils, and just come back the full group. Yeah, really quickly, I just want to give a shout out to some people on Twitter who've been retweeting everything. Cindy, Summer, and Keita. Thank you very much for retweeting all this out. Hopefully, this is useful to people out there in the world. Help us tell better stories to win our fights. So we have 10 minutes left, and I just want to give people a chance to share back, going through this exercise, what they came up with. And we probably won't get to everyone, so I'm just going to ask people if you want to share. Go ahead and just have a couple minutes and go ahead and share. Just tell what you came up, how it felt, what you came up with, and maybe if you did end up with a hashtag or not.
Oh yeah. So over here, for our conference, what we talked about, just in my work in general, for our queer youth of color here in the Delta and in Holmes County, I put that what they say is that LGBTQ lives are threatened. Also, they want to use the Bible. We are in the Bible Belt, so they do say God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, and further shaming queer people in the community. And then I said, what we say is that cis, heteronormative, religious people are the problem. It's beautiful to be religious and it's beautiful to be spiritually grounded, but also in most religions it is taught that that we're supposed to love one another, and that the omnipotent presence, whoever they are, loves us all, you know. And so the hashtag that I put up on the thing was hashtag Queer Delta, which could encompass like from Holmes County on up throughout the Delta for queer folks who need a safe space and visibility and things like that.
Cool, cool. I like that one. Anyone else want to share?
Just real quick, now we did too. We also focused on our corporal punishment campaign. Mississippi is one of the 19 states that still use corporal punishment to discipline children, and they say if you don't, I don't know what it is. If you don't beat your children, they will never be disciplined. Um, we say discipline comes from learning and understanding a mistake. Beating a child only instills fear, like slave owners did to their slaves. A child can learn from his or her mistakes without being struck or beaten. Hashtag don't beat me. Characters. I was assuming these were the people who were like against our campaign. So I said preachers, the older generation who's kind of set in their ways, in their own mindset. Um, and for images, I just skipped down. For we say we would show the image of slave owners beating slaves, so people understand this notion and the sense that we're coming from. Um, that it's not something that we want to take with us and share with our next generations to come. Some things we want to just leave behind, and the beating is one. And the hashtag for that would be enslaving ourselves.
Cool.
Sure. I was just gonna go for Project South. We focused on kind of Southern organizing and the conflict being around. So like the they say is the South needs to be shown how to move forward by Northern and national partners and kind of formal leadership. And we say the South has been a center of struggle throughout the years. And as the South goes, the nation goes. That movement and community in the South have been and continue to give to larger movement. And it's essential that we collaborate, self-determine, and practice like decentralized coordination. They say like the characters are President Obama and national movement organizers and formal movement leadership. And we say like the main characters are the people, local frontline organizers, group members, and the youth. And kind of some images that are used are kind of like Selma and President Obama and MLK Jr. or Congressman Lewis or Rosa Parks. And some of that foreshadowing is when like people bring up the I have a dream speech or other things of that sort. And I didn't finish going through some of that we says, but one hashtag that we've used in the South is, or we've used in the past is as the South goes, but trying to think of some more that bring that up too.
Cool. Can we get Angelica to go next?
Her mic's broken, so if you can just read out what she's
just read out. Sorry, I'm trying to find this. Is this the one loving has no?
Kupura not cops.
I did not find this. I'm sorry. I'm reading off the thing. Hashtag culture not cops for Angelica. Put in.
Can you see it?
I'm barely seeing it. Page 10, sorry. They say cops is underserved schools, help address behavioral issues, and keep kids safe. We say cops in schools lead to negative health outcomes for Black, Indigenous, immigrant, queer youth. They got to characters being Governor Snyder, school boards, Michigan Department of Corrections, Community Mental Health Administration parents, we say NIA. Cultural organizers, Indigenous Youth Empowerment Program, Black, Indigenous, Immigrant, Queer youth parents. They say youth violence, we say healthy youth, positive learning environments. And again, the hashtag was culture, not cops. For that was from Angelica on the chat. So I think we have like 3 more minutes, and I think we're just going to go into the wrap-up from Bex. I want to thank everyone for allowing me to just share with you. I really hope it's helpful. We have a lot more tools at Center of Story-Based Strategy. Please get in contact with us. Also, Intelligent Mischief. We're based in Boston, but we do things nationwide. Thanks a lot. You know, I'll let Jax take it away. I mean, Bex. I'll say.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Terry. For everyone who joined us, this is we have a public Skillshare the 3rd Friday of every month. We'll announce them on Twitter, Facebook, and we will send you an email as well. You can check out our website. It's transformativemedia.cc, where you can see the recorded Skillshare from today, and get links to both the facilitation guide if you want to do this workshop with your people, and notes from today in that worksheet. So thanks again, everybody, and thanks again, Terry Marshall.